Each week, I put together a ton of different articles for Fantasy Pros, and as I'm putting together all that matchup data, certain players stand out. These 9 players that we're going to talk about in this video are absolutely key to taking on DFS contests in week 9. These are absolutely going to help you win. So let's start with Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have been cooking in their second year under offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Lamar Jackson's potentially heading towards an MVP for the 3rd time before turning 28. And Jackson, he's PFF's highest graded quarterback when throwing the ball to or beyond the first down marker. The Ravens, they boast most plays of 20 plus yards on offense, and explosive plays are really good for fantasy football because they force the pace to be elevated, and the Ravens' woeful pass defense is also forcing Jackson and the offense in general to keep their foot on the pedal. Jackson has thrown for 270 plus passing yards in 5 of his 8 games, rushed for a minimum of 40 yards in every single game. Don't get me wrong, the Broncos are a tough defense. They rate really well in DVOA against both the pass and the run. But the Ravens still have an implied team total north of 27 points, yet nobody wants to play them. That's what makes Lamar Jackson an excellent GPP play this week. I probably wouldn't go there in cash, but I think you can absolutely look at stacking Lamar with Zay Flowers, and then you can maybe run it back with Cortland Sutton on the other side. I don't hate Mark Andrews, but sooner or later his touchdowns are going to dry up and make it hard for him to pay off. Before we get to our next player, if this is your first time finding Fantasy Sanctuary, hit the subscribe button. You got myself and Rich Coolin pouring over loads of data. Rich writes for DLF, I write for Fantasy Pros. We've also got Tyler who does great content for Underdog. Hit the subscribe button. You are not going to regret it. Moving over to Matthew Stafford, 5,700 on DraftKings, 7,600 FanDuel, and of course, 4.8K on Fantasy Game Day. If you haven't played Fantasy Game Day and you're based in the UK, use the promo code TSF23 for a free entry on your second go. Stafford, it's no coincidence that the moment he got back Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, he had his best game of the season. And we shouldn't hold that against him. Patrick Mahomes has been miserable for fantasy football all year, despite losing Rashee Rice. You give good players excuses when they lose their very best players. So I'm backing on Stafford for this week. I think that Puka Nacua is going to play. It sounds like it's trending that way. Stafford had 3 passing touchdowns before the Week 8 game. And then the moment he's got both of them back, he had 4 touchdowns against a tough defense. Now he's going up against the Seahawks team, which is middle of the pack in a bunch of different statistics. And they've allowed multiple passing touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games they've played. They've been playing fast, which draws the opponents, in this case the Rams, into also playing fast, draws them into playing with a good pass mindset. And I think that we can look at this game, look at Matthew Stafford, stack him with either Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, or perhaps throw in Kyren Williams to that stack, who is 8K on DK, so definitely on the more expensive side of things. But if you're not really into the Stafford stack with Kyren, just look at Kyren on his own, because Kyren's one of only 2 players in the NFL to have double-digit touchdowns so far this season, the other being Derrick Henry, who's played 1 more game than Kyren Williams. Williams has scored at least 1 touchdown in every game, leads all running backs in red zone rush attempts at 37. To start the season, Kyren was quite inefficient. He was averaging, I think it was 2.7 yards per carry over the first few weeks. But since week 4 onwards, he's averaged a respectable 4.3 yards per carry. He's got 4.0 missed tackles forced per game. The Seattle defense, they allow the 7th most running back fantasy points. They rank 21st in DVOA, give up 4.9 yards per carry. It really seems like a game where Kyren Williams can kind of do what he wants. And if the Rams don't go with an all-out passing attack, then we can see Williams do what he does. Even if Nakua's out there, then I'm not worried about Kyren Williams, because last week when Nacua and Cooper Kupp were out there, Kyren Williams saw a season-high 7 targets. So definitely somebody that I'll be looking to include on a bunch of lineups, and I think you can go there in cash games as well. Jahmyr Gibbs is more of a GPP play, though. But since the start of week 4, Jahmyr Gibbs has played 52% of snaps compared to David Montgomery's 38%. He's also seen 52 touches to Monty's 42. And in the last couple of games, we've also seen Montgomery really just look like the more explosive player that we know he can be. Yes, Montgomery's missed some time over the last couple of weeks with injuries in games. He's been banged up a little bit. But when Jahmyr Gibbs has had the ball, he's been excellent. He's seen 26 rush attempts for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Since week 4, Gibbs is the PPR RB6 in total points, whilst David Montgomery is the RB24 in that period. Because of the way that Montgomery mixes in this backfield, people hate to lean into it. But Gibbs, he's shown us that he has that tournament winning upside. And because people don't want to go there, it just makes it an even better tournament play. The Packers, who Gibbs plays this week, they had few answers to Joe Mixon in week 7. They allowed him to rack up 124 total yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 2 weeks after letting Kyren Williams have 105 total yards and a touchdown. They're not a defense that we particularly need to worry about. And I think that we can look at Gibbs here as an individual play, or at worst, if you want to take a dart from one of the Packers wide receivers, I'd probably be looking towards Romeo Doubs, who has the best role there. Malik Nabers, 7,500 on DraftKings, 8,400 on FanDuel, and 7,400 on Fantasy Game Day. It was such a red-hot start for Malik Nabers at the start of the season with 3 top 6 wide receiver finishes in his first 4 games. Then he got the concussion. That led to him missing weeks 5 and 6. Comes back, wide receiver 42 and wide receiver 29, heavily double teamed in one of those games. I mean, it just didn't quite click. But there's plenty of reasons for hope this week. You know, Nabers is facing a Commanders secondary that allowed him 28.7 PPR points when the teams met in week 3. They've allowed 5 top 8 finishes to wide receivers this year. Stacking Nabers with Daniel Jones is not something that feels particularly nice. I think I'd probably lean towards playing Nabers with Jaden Daniels or even Brian Robinson, because the Giants' run defense isn't anything special. Let's go to Jakobi Meyers next, who's 5,300 on DraftKings and plays the Bengals defense, which is not anything that we need to worry about. They continue to pay for the cheap owners' decisions to let guys like Jesse Bates walk over the last couple of years. In the last 2 weeks, the Bengals have given up big days to both Cedric Tillman and Devonta Smith, who both scored over 18 points against them. Jakobi Meyers is dealing with pretty questionable quarterback play from Gardner Minshew, but he should still be good value here. And Meyers has averaged 8.75 targets per game over the last 4 games and scored over 17 PPR points in 2 of those games. Parker Washington, the budget play of the week, 3,600 on DraftKings, 5,400 FanDuel, and 2,200 on Fantasy Game Day. Parker Washington looks like he's going to be an every down player now. Christian Kirk out for the year due to that season-ending shoulder injury. And Washington, like, he's not the most spectacular player, but last week he had catches of 15 yards and 21 yards, finished week 8 with 3 catches for 46 yards. Trevor Lawrence has looked much better in recent weeks. He ranks 5th in EPA over the last 4 games. He's completed 71% of his passes in that period. The Eagles, they've allowed the 10th most wide receiver fantasy points so far this year. And it should be a fruitful enough game for Washington to pay off his low cost. And he's a really easy addition to, if you're looking to make a Eagles stack, run it back with Parker Washington on the other side, which will open up some salary elsewhere. 8 minutes in. I know you're enjoying it if you made it this far. Hit the subscribe button. We do Dynasty Best Ball, Redraft, DFS content all year round. We will keep you cooking and get you winning. Kyle Pitts, my start of the week in our Week 9 preview video, which is up on the channel now. Go check that out. Kyle Pitts turned around an absolute slow start to the season. You know, Kirk Cousins looked pretty miserable over that first game, and it took a little while for Cousins and Pitts to really gel. But since then, he's got on a run of 4 straight games, finishing with at least 65 receiving yards. Since week 5, Kyle Pitts is the PPR tight end 3, averaging 16.1 points per game. That is a fantastic amount at the tight end position. The Falcons, they played Dallas this week, and with the Cowboys allowing the 12th most fantasy points to the position, and they've allowed 4 tight end touchdowns in the last 3 games played. Pitts' price, it's kind of at a point where people want to pay up or they want to pay down. So I don't think we're going to get huge ownership on Kyle Pitts this weekend. There's not a lot that I'd want a heavily game stack in this one, but I think you can look at little mini correlations with Kyle Pitts and CD Lamb. Moving on to our last player, it is Will Dissly. And with the uptick in passing for the Chargers, it's benefited not only Justin Herbert, but also Will Dissly, who's seen target shares of 29% and 23% over the last 2 games. Dissly isn't the most prolific fantasy option, but at this price, We hardly need him to be, 3,100 on DraftKings, 4,800 on FanDuel, and 2,200 on Fantasy Game Day. 17 catches for 148 yards over the last 3 games. Disley can really capitalize against Brown's defense that allowed Grant Calcaterra 4 for 67 a couple of weeks ago. I wouldn't want to play too many punt plays alongside Will Disley because you've probably given up a bunch of ceiling when you do so. But if you're looking to open up salary elsewhere, Will Disley is the punt tight end play of the week for me. Those are your best DFS plays. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. We get back to 100% of questions on this channel. And if you're looking for more content, check out some of the videos. We absolutely have you covered ready for week 9.